welcome to a show where you will hear about how our liberty is being eroded by the very people that swear an oath to protect it.
Today, the president signed a big new anti-terrorism bill that would expand the government's ability to track down terrorists, but at some cost.
On this show, we will discuss many of the lies that the government that hates us, by the way, we will discuss the lies that the people in positions of power and influence spread every day.
And what is the best way to confuse children? Confuse them about their sexuality, confuse them about their gender, expose them to things that their little brains are not ready for yet. That is how they are confusing children. It is leading to chaos, and Big Daddy government, of course, can be there to pick us all up and take care of us at the end of it.
We will also talk about how current elected leadership at all levels of government has been corrupted by power and control, as well as discuss the types of leadership needed to correct our republic's course.
We the people. It was time to remember that we the people are the government.
Providing assistance for the Ukrainians to defeat the Russians, that's the number one priority for the United States right now.
I am your host, Larry Linton, retired U.S. Navy Command Master Chief and prior Tennessee House of Representatives District 12 candidate, and welcome to the Liberty, Leadership, and Lies podcast. Welcome to this week's show, ladies and gentlemen. Coming to you from Gina, Louisiana. Actually, I'm recording this episode from a hotel in Alexandria, Louisiana, but my work takes me into Gina every day of the week for the next few weeks. I have a treat for the audience today, especially for the residents of Sevier County. On today's program, we will be talking with Tennessee State Senator Frank Niceley. Senator Niceley represents the 8th Senate District here in Tennessee, which includes the counties of Claiborne, Granger, Hancock, Jefferson, Sevier, and Union. If you have family or friends in those counties, be sure and share this episode with them. Senator Niceley is a Tennessean through and through, if you know what I mean. Pay attention to what he has to say in this interview, not just about the special session, but about all things New World Order. This man could teach a lot of other elected members of the Republican Party a thing or two about conservatism. And with that, based upon the length of the interview, let's get right into it, and I'll come back on the other side. So, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome to the program today State Senator Frank Niceley, who represents us here in Sevier County, Tennessee. So for all my fellow Sevier Countyans, please pay attention as we get started. And Senator Niceley, again, thank you for coming on the program, and good day to you, sir.
Well, it's a pleasure. Good to talk to you.
So as we talked about earlier, I'd like to talk a little bit about Governor Lee's recent call, or convening the special session in August. And what it entails is, I think, red flag laws. And I'd like to get your perspective on that you could share with your constituents here in Sevier County.
Well, first of all, there's not going to be any red flag laws passed. We've polled the Senate and polled the House. There's no appetite at all for red flag laws. I don't know what the governor is wanting to do. We've told him that that we're not going to pass red flag laws, but I guess he thinks that he can call us all in there and work on us one by one, and maybe try to do something. The truth of the matter is, we've already done something. We have put, I think, $223 million into the school systems, mostly for public schools, but I think $14 million of that is for private schools to help all the schools that don't have SROs and don't have security officers. We put enough money in there for all the schools to have an SSRO in the school. And that's really the only thing that's going to stop these guys. I mean, you can harden the school, you can put more doors, you can put bulletproof glass, you can do lots of things, but teachers leave the doors open. I just heard today from a sheriff that they put little magnets in the doors so that when a kid goes to the bathroom, he can come back in and open the door, and it won't be locked, so the teacher doesn't have to get up. I mean, we got to make sure that the staff, the teachers, the principals, everyone takes this serious. You know, the school shooting in Texas, someone had left the door open. Well, there's no need for the state to spend millions of dollars having secure locks if the local staff's going to leave the door open. I mean, it's just, I don't know what you do. What do you do in a case like that?
Yeah, I think it's just human nature that we err on that. But hardened targets, like we mentioned before, consists of more than just locks and metal detectors. It involves armed security. We've done this with banks. We've done this with our airports. We've done this in just about every sector of society that does not involve our children. Why aren't we doing that for our children?
Well, we have. Just about every school in the state now has an armed guard. Now, this extra $223 million was to finish it out and get the few schools in the rural districts that don't have an armed guard yet. This was designed to help them get armed guards and help some of the private schools get armed guards. Because you're exactly right. The only thing that's going to help is have an armed guard there at the school. Now, 10 years ago, I passed a bill that allowed these schools to hire retired law officers, and they can hire them for a fraction of what they can get an SRO. And it authorized the teachers, if they had post-training, to arm some of the teachers. That was 10 years ago. And very few have done it, but a few have. A few have gone ahead and armed a few of their teachers. And we need more of that. No one needs to know which teacher's armed. It's just common sense. Because the officer's going to be the target. Yeah. If someone's going to come into a school and try to shoot up the school, the first person he's going to try to shoot is the uniformed officer. So we need some schools, some janitors, we need school teachers, we need assistant principals, different people scattered through the system that are armed. One of the first things you need to do away with this crazy idea that you're going to have a gun-free zone. There is no such thing as a gun-free zone. These liberals assume that people obey the law. The only people that obey the law are the law-abiding citizens. The criminals are not going to obey the law, and they say, I can't go in there. That's a gun-free zone. What kind of world do people live in who think that you can have a gun-free zone? You know, if I go to pick up my grandchildren and I've got my gun in my pocket and I should happen to go up on the school grounds, I would be a felon if they were carrying that gun on the school grounds. So,
I know, it's ridiculous,
it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. This whole idea of a gun-free zone is about as stupid a thing as you could get. I remember Senator Fred Thompson 20 years ago said, how stupid can you get to think that a criminal's going to stop when he sees a sign that says this is a gun-free zone?
It's ridiculous because, like you said, only the law-abiding citizens are going to obey that law. It's like, how's that war on drugs working out for our country? We've made them illegal. Is that
murder's been illegal since the Old Testament, the Ten Commandments. I mean, we can make it double illegal, but that wouldn't help anything.
Right? What is that going to do?
It's not going to do anything.
It's just not a deterrent.
It's just some people think that we can solve this problem with laws. Well, we can't. It's people who don't obey the law, they're exempt from all these things. So I don't know. We've got to have security guards. We've got to have harder targets. We got to have better locks, bulletproof glass, and then we need to work on these gun-free zones.
I agree. I thank you for absolutely stating that. But there's something that is concerning to a lot of us other fellow conservatives, and that was some wording that Senator Jack Johnson used a couple of weeks ago that was caught on mic, that it's got to be rebranded. Like these emergency protective orders, which, all those things do is just it's adding a palatable flavor or palatable wording for an apathetic public to go, okay, since it's an emergency protective order, we'll go along with it. It's just like a red flag law, and then it denies law-abiding citizens their Second, Fifth, and 14th Amendment rights by just a mere allegation.
Well, I don't know what Jack was thinking about, and I can't speak for Jack, but you can't rebrand a red flag law to where it's going to suit me or most of the people. It's just any time that you can have a neighbor accuse you of being crazy, and the sheriff's going to come in and take your guns, and then you have to go to court to try to prove you're not crazy. I mean, how could I go to court and prove that I'm not crazy? The fact that I run for office proves that I'm about half crazy.
Absolutely. I spent 20 some odd years on submarines, so I'm absolutely
so you're,
crazy.
You're absolutely crazy. So I mean, it's ridiculous. It's so I don't know. We've got another thing that we've got to take a hard look at. These school shootings, they involve two things. They involve guns, and a very high percentage of these kids are on one family of drugs. Big Pharma is so powerful that they're never going to let anything be passed from the top down. What we've got to do is educate these parents and tell these parents, don't let some quack doctor put your child on an SSRI. I mean, I've had people in the last couple of weeks, two women whose husbands, one of them had insomnia. They put him on an SSRI. He killed himself in 3 weeks. Another boy, his 19-year-old son, they put him on SSRI. He killed himself. What we've got to do is educate these parents. Do not let these doctors put your children on one of these drugs. There's about 10 of them. Zoloft, Xanax. It says right on the bottle it might possibly make you suicidal. Well, the vast majority of the people, they're fine. They're not going to make them suicidal. But if 1 in a million goes crazy and starts shooting people, why do we even... We got along fine without these drugs.
Absolutely. I mean, and Big Pharma does not care one whit about that. They just care about the profit.
Yeah, they care about the profits. It's but they are so powerful, and they own Washington, D.C., and they can put enough lobbyists in Nashville. So there's no way to control it from the top down. So what we've got to do is educate the parents, say, pay attention to what drugs your children are on. Do not let them put your children on one of these 10 drugs. These SSRIs. Look it up on the internet, find out what they are, because a very high percentage of these school shooters are on one of these drugs.
Absolutely.
And when Big Pharma hears me saying that, well, you know, that I don't even know if I've ever gotten a contribution from them before. I don't keep up with it, but they would give my opponent, they would give my opponent a healthy contribution.
Right. They've just targeted you now for being the primary. But so another thing that has been concerning, besides the rebranding, and I understand that you're a big, huge Second Amendment fan and now the anti-Big Pharma, but what can we do here in Tennessee to ensure that they don't continue this creep of federalism into our states? You know, because they lure us or lure elected officials with the promise of money.
Our founding fathers knew that the federal government would get out of control and try to usurp the state's powers, steal the state's powers. And they are. We all realize that. And Tennessee, we're trying to drift away from them. I passed a bill this year to let us take back over our meat inspection back from the federal government. And that's just one step. I passed another bill where the state can buy silver and gold for our rainy day fund and have a reserve because the time comes, if we ever hope we don't, but we may have to print our own money someday. So in Tennessee, we have a new attorney general named Scametti.
I think he's doing good things.
He is. He's asked for 10 lawyers, and their sole purpose will be to fight federal government overreach.
It's amazing. I think that we can actually serve as a model for the rest of the states in the union to reassert our sovereign control over the federal government. I mean, that's the way our country was designed. This federal government is not a party to our Constitution. It's a product of the Constitution. The states are sovereign, and above the states are the people. We've somehow allowed it to flip its on its head, where the federal government thinks that they're the sovereign over everything. And they've wielded so much power just based upon, using the taxpayers' dollars, our sweat equity, against not only the citizens but against the state legislatures.
Well, the war between the states and the Great Depression helped the federal government usurp our powers. We need to teach our children what sovereign means. We need to teach some of our teachers in our schools what sovereign means. What is a democracy? What is a republic? We need to, there's about 20 words that we need to make sure our children understand the definition of before we start teaching them about American history. And, sometimes I wonder if some of our teachers even know something, if they know the difference between a democracy and a republic. And what does usurp mean? What does sovereign mean? You know, they need to realize that the states created the federal government.
Right.
The states created the county governments. And everything at the state level was legal, rape, murder, whatever, until we passed laws to make it illegal. And everything at the county level is illegal until the state legislature passes a law and gives them permission to do it. Now, it took me a long time to realize that, but when I finally figured that out, things started making a little more sense. But so many people thought, you know, they talk about local control this, local control that. Well, that's all well and good, but the locals have no control unless the state legislature passed a law and made it possible for the locals to do that.
And we got to get back to that point where the states are the sovereign, and the states answer to the people. I mean, it is, I think, not taught in our schools by design, because what government is going to educate you that you're actually the sovereign over it?
Well, you know, public education is not all that old. It's in big scheme of things, a recent phenomenon, and more people are going back to home schools, private schools, church schools, virtual schools, and you know, there's a little bright light on the horizon, but we've got to get our public schools and get our civics teachers teaching these kids the value of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, state sovereignty, our state constitutions. You know, most people, they call us a democracy. The word democracy is not mentioned in the U.S. Constitution, and it's not mentioned in any of the state constitutions.
Right, because the founding fathers, they feared and abhorred the word democracy, because it's mob rules. It's the tyranny of the majority, which is mentioned in the Federalist Papers, the tyranny of the majority.
It's two coyotes and a sheep voting on what's for lunch.
Absolutely. I've used that phrase a lot, but, you know, a constitutional republic is two coyotes and a well-armed sheep discussing what's for lunch. And that's what's so important about our Second Amendment rights. You know, you hear this from the federal government coming down for a long while now, especially from those on the left. I don't like to even call them Democrats anymore, because they're actually trying to govern as communists. But they want to remove the people's ability to keep and bear arms. I mean, and why is that? Because that's our one ability to fight off tyranny. We can look back through all of human history and see what happens in countries or governments to the people when they are unarmed. And that just further ushers in tyranny. And that's why I believe the Founding Fathers put that in there. And it's to fight against tyranny, and it's not only that, it's nature's first law. First law of nature is self-defense. If we are not armed,
tell my grandkids about, you know, checks and balances. You know, the three branches of government, and we got all these checks for the administrative branch on the executive branch, and they've got a check on the judicial branch and all that. But the ultimate check, and the check that has worked so well that we don't even know we've got it, is the Second Amendment, which is an armed citizen balanced out against an armed government. And that's the ultimate check. And we need to look at it like that. When you finally realize, and it takes a lot of people a long time to realize this, that there is evil in the world, there is a bunch of evil people who want to take over the govern the world. And when you realize that, things start to make sense. And the only reason that they haven't taken over is because America is armed. And if they can ever disarm America, they can take over.
Absolutely.
We're the only thing standing between complete global tyranny is armed Americans. See, they disarmed the rest of the world. I mean, they disarmed Australia. That's crime has gone through the roof. They disarmed England. Now London's the most dangerous city in the world with knives. But if they can ever disarm America, they can take over. Now, most people don't want to think that there is a global elite who's trying to take over the world. And it took me a long time to believe it myself. But I believe it now. And until you start to believe that, nothing makes good sense.
Absolutely. And again, like you just said, an armed populace is a respected populace by the government. You have to respect that. And that if the Second Amendment it goes away, all hope, I believe, for liberty and freedom is lost. Because if we, like you said, if we fail, there's nowhere else to escape to. I've heard that several times. If the government of the United States falls into tyranny, there is no escaping to anywhere else. And it takes states like our beloved Tennessee here, the volunteer state, and our citizens to stand in the gap between an overreaching, creeping tyranny in the federal government and the people. And again, I admire members like you that have decided to take that stand in the arena and to stand in the gap between government and the citizens.
Well, we have some good legislators. It's amazing that we do have as many good legislators, and a lot of the legislators are good. They're just not educated and not aware yet. I mean, it takes years of reading to kind of get up to speed on what's going on. But I was reading this stuff in the 80s, and what I read in the 80s happened in the 90s, and what I read in the 90s happened in the double-aught years. And after a while, you begin to realize this is real. They're trying to take over. They're trying to destroy our republic and take over the world. And we've just got to. Our founding fathers, it amazes me how smart they were. They gave the states the power to push back, but it takes leadership and backbone to do it.
Right, that's what's lacking. We already have.
We've got more leadership and backbone in Tennessee than in most states.
There is, and again, that's why I chose to retire to Tennessee. And a lot of people give non-locals that flack, but hey, I may not be from Tennessee, but I came here as soon as I could. As soon as I retired from the Navy. In fact, I tell people this quite frequently. I had purchased my home. It was under contract before I even retired from the Navy. And as soon as I was done, I lickety-split came here from Virginia.
Well, I had 8 great-granddaddies that fought in the American Revolution that are buried in East Tennessee. So I'm about as East Tennessee as you can get.
Yep. And
you can ask me to help you, and I'll do whatever I can. But don't be telling me a lot of stuff to do.
Right.
Asking and telling two different things.
Right. And there's a lot of people that are being, well, not a lot. I would say there are a significant number of people in our legislature that are being told to do stuff by people that they're not elected to represent. We could see this with the Covenant school shooting, right? The Tennessee 3, as they were called. They're not doing the bidding of their constituents. They're doing the bidding of left-leaning or communist-leaning organizations all over the state.
They're promoting themselves. They're self-promoting. Take advantage of that situation to promote yourself. But the people I was proud of was those 3. I think it was 3 of those officers. Might have been a 4th without the camera. They didn't hesitate like they did in Florida and Texas. They ran in there wide open and took care of the situation.
Absolutely. I give them multiple props. I did my 30 years in the Navy, but these law enforcement officers, they're actually, people talk about the thin blue line, but they are the people between us and tyranny every day of the week and every week of the year. They see the most horrific stuff on a continuous basis, more so than, I think the armed forces does, because wars are periodic. Crime is perpetual.
Well, at Columbine, they stood outside and didn't rush in. In Florida, they didn't rush in. Texas, they waited till the shooting stopped before they went in. What are we paying these guys for if they're going to stand outside the school and wait till the shooting stops before they go in? It's unbelievable.
It's mind-boggling. Because when you take that badge on you, you get that sidearm, and you swear your oath. You were there to stand between evil and the people. And those officers there at the Covenant school shooting, they did that, and they should serve as an example for everybody. Now, speaking of
supposedly they didn't know each other before. They came from different parts of town and had not trained together, but they looked like they were a well-trained team when they went in there. They didn't didn't miss a lick.
Oh, that makes it even better. I'm gonna have to go up there and buy them guys lunch or something. Speaking of that Covenant School shooting, what are your thoughts on them not releasing the quote-unquote manifesto of the disturbed young lady?
I don't think we need to do anything with a special session until we know exactly what she was in those manifestos. You know, that's a problem. There's too many things that just don't add up about this whole thing. Where did the kid in Texas get he didn't have a job. He bought 3 or 4 very expensive rifles.
Yeah, Daniel Defense Arms. Those are very expensive.
Yeah. So where did he get that money? Where did this girl get all that money all of a sudden?
Yeah, 28-year-old, obviously suffering from a mental illness. Where did they get the money? And then I'd also like to know why, because I think it's discussed, or it's alluded to that it's discussed in the manifesto, why she chose that particular school over others. Could it be because of the Christian faith? Could it be because it was a softer target? I mean, these are things absolutely legislators.
What I heard early on was it was a soft target.
Right.
She had 3 schools she was looking at, but the other 2 had security officers, and so she chose this one. So that's a good argument for more security officers. So, and we put $223 million in the budget to help all the schools get a security officer.
Again, it goes down to politics is local, and so we got to get these school boards and these counties and these education agencies at the local education agencies to get on board with just protecting students. I mean, parents entrust their children to other adults, sometimes most of the time strangers in the school system. The least that the school system could do, first and foremost, is to do whatever they can to protect their lives. And if that involves hardening the schools and arming teachers, absolutely. That should be primary, I believe. But I have a whole belief system about our public education system in our country. First of all, there is no federal authority for it in the Constitution, so I don't think the federal government should be involved at all. There's no Article 1, Section 8 authority for public education.
No, there's not, and we need to abolish the Department of Education in Washington and turn it back over to the states. This country was built by before we had public education. Public education came along fairly lately. I remember Governor Clement, when I was just young, he got elected governor by promising to buy the books. Before that, the parents bought the books. And so when the parents were buying the books, they knew what was in the book.
Right.
Now then, we don't know what's in the books.
Again, thank you for coming on the program, and I hope that we can have some more time with you here in the future before we get this the special session convened. And if there's anything else that you'd like to let the listeners here in Sevier County know about, the mic is yours.
The governor called the special session, and he will limit what we can talk about. But the legislature can call a special session at the same time and put in there what we want to talk about. So it's going to be interesting to see what eventually happens. I'd like to see what the legislature wants to do. It's the Speaker of the House in Tennessee is more powerful than the governor. The Speaker can impeach the governor can't impeach the Speaker, and 2 or 3 other little things that, by all accounts, the Speaker of the House is more powerful than the governor in Tennessee. So, and the Speaker of the House is his own man. He'll do what he thinks is right, and so it's going to be interesting.
Yes, sir. I believe it is. And on that point that you just discussed, we've talked about that before on my program, how we're taught that we have 3 co-equal branches of government, but the body of government
that is not co-equal.
Yeah, exactly.
Not in Tennessee,
the legislature,
it says 3 distinct branches of government.
Right, but we're taught that, right? Our public education teaches that there's co-equal, but it's the legislatures at the federal and the state levels that are the boss, because they're
they control the money.
Right.
The House of Representatives controls the money, and so if we had the leadership and the backbone, we can control the federal government. But like I say, it's going to take a lot of backbone and a lot of leadership.
A lot of people that are not afraid to tell the emperor he doesn't have any clothes on.
Exactly.
Well, thank you again, Senator, for coming on the program. I appreciate it, and like I said, I'll get the link to you once I've released it, and hope to have you on the program again.
All right. Thanks a lot. Anytime.
All right. Thank you, Senator Niceley. That's it for this week, ladies and gentlemen, and I truly hope you enjoyed the interview. I encourage each of you to reach out to your elected representatives, both at the state and the federal level. You just may be surprised when they answer your call and talk to you like I was surprised this past week. Once again, I would like to thank Senator Niceley for coming on the show and sharing his views. I am looking forward to talking with him in the future. In closing, we have this week's wisdom from God's Word, and today it comes to us from Proverbs 28:16. A ruler who lacks understanding is a cruel oppressor, but he who hates unjust gain will prolong his days. What do you think Governor Lee's understanding about the way Tennesseans feel about their Second Amendment rights? Do you think he lacks understanding of it? That'll all be shown to him in August. Thank you all for listening this week, and I pray that you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Until next week, stand in the arena with me. Reveille, it's time to wake up.